Just here in the last few days, there are quite a few stories out there on major sites: CBS Sports, The Athletic, Dallas Morning News. One in a discussion with Greg Sankey, SEC commissioner, others basically citing just reasons why Texas and Oklahoma will move to the SEC in 2024. Of course, it's been something that's been discussed. The date was supposed to be 2026, and it came out during the offseason that 2024 could be a target, and then there's a lot of factors involving negotiations. One that's being talked about at CBS Sports is that future matchups between the SEC and the Big 12 could shift to Big 12 stadiums. Maybe that's one bargaining chip that they're using to release Texas and Oklahoma, but to get back some attractive games in Big 12 stadiums. But yes, so it's still not set. It's still not in place. But when Brett Yormark is talking about considering it, and Greg Sankey's also talking about 2024, you got to think that I would think that they're pretty confident that they can work out something to get that released earlier, or they wouldn't just be so open in the media to discuss a date of 2024.
Yeah, I think so, Mark. I think, the fact that you're seeing both conferences, to your point, openly discuss it, I think it's something that's certainly a very, very strong possibility. I mean, we talked about this here, when the Big Ten made the announcement with UCLA and USC, coming over. And kind of with a new TV deal that's going to happen. I believe in either 24 or 25, there with, but it made it hard to believe and hard to kind of rationalize that um, the SEC would ultimately be willing to kind of stand pat and just let kind of the Big Ten have a little bit more of the limelight, so to speak. And so, I would be at this point. I would not be surprised at all to see this happen in 2024. And I think it's best for both sides if you can come to a great agreement. Right. I know that the Big 12 wants to move forward with probably without Texas, Oklahoma, and Texas in the Big 12, right? They want to kind of have their new stamp moving forward with the teams that are going to be part of that conference, and certainly with the SEC, having Oklahoma and Texas and what that schedule looks like, and just continuing. Not only, I mean, they're already the premier conference in the country, but continuing to bolster that, and what that looks like, with them, will continue to be very critical and very important. So I think that will. I would be, again. I've been shocked through some of this process. I kind of thought initially that would happen next year. That it would end up being here in this 2023 season. But everything that I'm hearing continues to point to 2024, maybe a little bit more likely than it was maybe a few months ago.
And if that new format for the SEC, once they add Texas, Oklahoma, get to 16 teams, becomes a no division, no pod, just 1 through 16 model that's got a scheduling format similar to what we saw that the ACC is going to institute this coming season in 2023. So for the SEC, that would be a 3-6-6 model. So you would designate 3 rivals for each school, and then you just split up the rest of the conference 6 and 6, and you alternate playing that pack of 6 one year, the other 6 the next year, and you just go back and forth, and then you play the 3 primary rivals every year. I did some quick work on this a few days ago. to see where this may land if you make sure you protect all the rivalries, of course, and you also try to make it balanced in regards to the level of play of those three designated rivals. And I gave Texas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Arkansas as their three designated rivals, which makes total sense. And anytime you do this, you're going to have some outliers. You're going to be able to work it almost all the way through, but then you're going to have some oddities that you can't avoid because not everybody has the same exact number of rivals. So with Oklahoma, I've got Texas, Missouri, and then I had nowhere else to put another Vandy slot. So I came out with Vandy, and I am not predicting that's the way it's going to land, but we shall see if they go with that, or again, if I believe I've heard several times that the pods are not going to be used for the SEC, or if they just stay with these SEC East and West and reconfigure it and move these two into the West, and then do some other reconfiguring.
Yeah, no, I think, as you mentioned about the pods, that was something that I think initially on the announcement that there was a lot of like momentum in it, but I think that was more kind of, from what I understand and what I've heard, more kind of media created momentum related to, the interest in the pods. But I've heard more than anything, there's more, I think, energy towards three permanent rivals, and then just kind of a round robin type of schedule, after that. So I think, that would be, it's really interesting. I think there's a few possibilities for Oklahoma in those, in those permanent rivals. I mean, you know that Texas is going to be one, obviously. So you've got the other two. I mean, I think, you've got Arkansas as a possibility, you've got Missouri as a possibility, you've got Texas A&M, I think, as a possibility. So I think two of those three will be. I think there's moment. I've heard some momentum towards Missouri being one of those yearly rivals for Oklahoma, but the other one's going to be interesting. I know, and specifically, how does that work with Texas A&M? I know there's been some talk about Texas and Texas A&M not necessarily wanting to rekindle that game in terms of like being every year game again, but we'll see. We'll see how that actually plays out, and I think. And I think the most interesting thing, and I think Sonny Dykes mentioned this, and I think he got a little bit of backlash, particularly from some of the SEC side of things, was talking about late in the year they didn't have I don't remember exactly what the quote was talking about late in the year they had a tougher schedule from some of these than some of these SEC teams do, as they typically do that next to last week of the year. But I think a lot of people, were pointing at. I think the rest of the SEC teams would love to have that schedule that TCU has during the conference season, and not have to go and play, these guys that they have to play week in and week out in a much tougher conference and division. So I think that'll be interesting to see from that aspect for Oklahoma and Texas, how they approach non-conference scheduling in the future. Um, with Texas, has had home and homes with Ohio State in the past, have had Alabama previously. Oklahoma's had some with Alabama, has had some with Notre Dame and stuff like that. So what does that look like? Does Oklahoma and Texas, do they start, scheduling? Is it like one FCS opponent, you know, one Power Five opponent, and one Group of Five, or is it an FCS opponent and two Group of Five guys early on until they get more integrated, so to speak, in the SEC? I think that will be just very intriguing to watch what that mindset looks like.
I like Sonny Dykes, And I get his point, and it's been made by many people in looking at the SEC taking a week off basically to play scrimmage games, not the entire conference, but a pretty good portion of the conference that second to last week of the season. But that's kind of their own business. And as long as the entirety of the schedule is not a joke, which it's not, based on both a difficult conference, the best conference in America, and then if you add on to that, that the SEC plays just as many difficult out of conference games as anybody else does, if not more, especially when the likes of Georgia, Kentucky, Florida, and South Carolina are doubling up on their rivals in terms of playing the ACC schools that are their in-state rivals, and also typically throwing on another difficult non-conference game. I found it funny because Sonny Dykes makes this claim, and then I look at, not that I needed to look at TCU's schedule, but their 3 out of conference games were Colorado, SMU, and Tarleton. So I didn't know what he was really um, going for there. But
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It was, I mean, yeah, I understood his point, certainly, but yeah, the holistic view of the schedule wasn't necessarily part of the consideration. I think in that comment that he made.
Russ, I would think that the SEC deciding between 8 and 9 conference games, which of course the SEC plays 8 conference games. So OU's moving from a format in which they play 9 conference games and only 3 non-conference games to an 8-4 model. And if it stays that way, I would think that there would be just more likelihood or more possibility that they keep the Oklahoma State uh, rivalry intact. But if the SEC would go to a 9-game conference season, then that limits the flexibility that you have with scheduling a 3-game non-conference slate and trying to keep one for Oklahoma State all the time. I just don't see that happening all the time. I don't think Oklahoma wants to be locked down to Bedlam every year, especially if they only have 3 games to play with.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it'll happen. It may be something that happens, once every 5 or 6, 7 years or something like that, just to play. But it's one of the unfortunate parts of conference realignment. I think with the with how tough the SEC is year in and year out, you don't want a game like that. That's Oklahoma State is a typically a perennial top 20, top 25 team. So that's probably not something that Oklahoma is going to be interested in doing. And I think Oklahoma State has, they've come out publicly, particularly Mike Gundy has come out publicly and has said on a couple of different occasions that that they're not planning on playing Oklahoma. So I don't know if that's just him or if that's the athletic department in general, but it doesn't sound like that's something that's going to happen after the move is made.